I'm teaching at the International School of Geneva. I've had 27 years of teaching for the moment, and this is my 9th year in the International School of Geneva, and I teach science both in English and in French. So with that in mind, I'm just going to show you very quickly the overview of what we hope to cover within Year 7s at our school, probably very similar to yours, but I sort of inserted the Unit 3 that I'm going to choose to talk about after matter and cells. So thinking that our students come to us from primary school, if you were, the equivalent of your primary school, and they talk to us about very generally knowing about science. So it's a more targeted approach as they come into matter and cells. Very quickly, at the end of units, we encourage, I encourage my students to do what I call a revision sheet. And I don't know if you can see this, probably very blurry. It's a very concise way of writing up everything that they've learned. It's 1 page of A4 paper, and Tony, I will insert that into my presentation if you want. I'll take some examples, but you can see that they put their understanding in their own words. If you can see, I'm not sure you can, because I can't see it on my screen. So we do that for the 2 first units, and they have very clear learning objectives in those units, as we all do. And then when we get to our 3rd unit, which is famous scientists, the idea is that the aim is that they learn to research about science and learn to present very detailed information that they have not been taught, but that they will research themselves. So they have to understand what is a reliable source, and we work on that. And the general aim for me as a teacher is to get to know my students and understand what their passion is. Obviously, from a very, very low level, we're still in Year 7, but everybody's passionate about something at some stage. And this is an example of what the instructions I give to them. And their focus is science, obviously, not how many, sometimes they talk about how many children the scientists have. And they choose scientists that are far, far afield. And in my planning, I use this wheel that you see here. And I break up the understanding in what the learning objective is, or how they get to the mastery threshold, which is, in this case, them choosing the area that interests them and what they would like to present to the rest of the class, sometimes to the year. We do it as a year session. Pre-COVID, we used to do this as a poster presentation to the whole year, but since COVID, we've had to adapt and do it as an oral presentation with slides, which has worked equally well, if not better. So then I explain to them how they are going to through guided research, I try to explain to them how they get to their mastery threshold. And you'll be very, very amazed by the array of scientists that come up, because thinking that I'm teaching in an international school, the scientists are scientists very often that I have never heard of. I don't know every scientist in the world, obviously, and I've never heard, and they're sometimes very ancient scientists, sometimes they're very, very topical right now. Depending with COVID, we had a lot of people choosing COVID as one of the options. And so after really zoning in onto their mastery threshold and making sure that they have a connection between them and that scientist, it's very important for them to have a personal connection, because I find that overcomes their fear of learning a subject that they have never heard about, words, vocabulary that they've never heard about. And the way that they will present it, that means the organization of the data, is either a poster or presentation, and they are masters of their own topic. Very often they dovetail onto each other, which is quite nice, and they are amazed at the array of things that they learn. So here's a little selection, not necessarily the best presentations. I just found these presentations, and I thought they were one woman. I promote women in science, obviously. Remembering that I teach in English and French, the French text within the presentation, kids are more or less bilingual, multilingual, I should say. Very short presentations of their understanding and presenting different types of sciences to a very young audience, I think is very important as well. Graphs always have to have a data or graph and a tie back to ancient scientists. Here you can see that the student chose an ancient scientist from the golden ages, I think it's called, and inserted that in their understanding of how that helped to build Cecilia Payne's science. Another example that I have here is Chinese scientists, which I thought was, I learned a lot about this, which is a bonus when you're having presentations from students. When you get to learn, it is really, really useful, I think. So here I'm going to put my slideshow on full screen so you can see a little bit better. Here we go. Sorry, I'm in the middle of it. I will move this to the side somewhere where I can't see it. There you go. Here's the information. I don't know how many of you have actually heard of this scientist. I hadn't. Hands up that before I heard my student talk about it. Again, all these presentations will be in my PowerPoint that I've sent to Tony, which I'm happy to share with everyone. And maybe my favorite scientist, who I knew a little bit more about, would be, sorry for the delay, would be Antoine Lavoisier. And okay, my computer doesn't want to load very quickly. And again, it's lovely to see. I'm just going to scroll down to the last feedback slide that I always ask my students to put, is why they chose that scientist and what relationship they had with the scientist. They have to establish a relationship. Sometimes it's they share a birthday, they went to primary school in the same place. I mean, amazing connections, I think, with the scientists. So that's the way that the data is presented. But the approach that I take is that wheel that I showed you before on this this mastery learning wheel, I call it, that I found on the internet, I have to say, and I find it very useful in my planning stage of what I want to do in that unit. And I started sort of at the back end, and I wanted to get to know my students better, and from that I sort of constructed this unit so that I could end up with more understanding of what is interesting to my students, so I can build my further units on that interest. And really, it's really fun to learn from your students on a daily basis. So that would be what I used as a tool. Really, that wheel was my starting tool for the presentation. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
No, there is a question, and it was very clear. Thank you. I really like this idea, and I would like to use it myself. I wonder if you've thought about how you might mention how you have been successful in engaging the students.
They have a rubric that they have to follow, and I have with a rubric we have sort of completion points and how much the value of each section is. And we use a rubric to find out how much they have acquired in their scientific knowledge. So I make it a personalized, with matter and cells, you can personalize it very quickly, because from their learning objectives, I make sure that they've built on that. So the aim is really for them to build on their, on things that they have learned. They get extra points if they bridge both units together. So the simple answer is I use a rubric for that.